Hey everyone, welcome to the Land in the Bible podcast. Today we're going to take a break from our regularly scheduled program where we're in the Sermon on the Mount series, but we're just going to talk about something that you have coming up and then give a little bit of more of a personal background, I guess, on some aspects of your life and the concept of travel and journeys and that kind of thing. So tell us a little bit about what we're going to get into.
Yeah, so there's an idea that I think runs throughout the Bible, which is the idea that this place, this earth, is not, it's certainly not in its current condition, is not our forever home. You know, this is not necessarily a place where you belong. This is a place where you can have seasons of relative stability, you know, where for 10 or 15 years or something, you live in the same house and have the same friends. But eventually the way this life works is, you know, people die, people move, you know, you get a job somewhere else and your kids move out of the house and they kind of leave you, you know, to go establish their own lives. And so really I think this life is more seasons, you know, and it's a journey through more than it is I don't know that there's really a destination. You know, we think that there are destinations. I think sometimes, like maybe when you're young, you really build up getting a degree or getting married or something like this. But you know, when you get into your field, you know, maybe you finally get that doctorate. Now you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or some business owner or something, and you've achieved some status of success. But then you find out that that's not really a destination. That's also just one more thing, and you're going to keep moving on. And you know, and there's a really, really sad. It's in the Proverbs. It talks about how all laughter, all joy ends in sorrow or tears. And you know, you're like, wow, that's a dark verse. But when you think about it, it's true. You know, it's true because the way I heard it described, it made sense to me was, you know, imagine you're sitting around a table with the 8 or 10 people you love the most. Like, you know, depends on your family and your background, who that is for you. But, you know, maybe it's your mom, your dad, your brothers, sisters, your wife, you know, closest friends. But you've got these people that you just like, I love being around these people. This is awesome. We're having just great time of you know, just socializing, you know, if you want to sound spiritual, you could say fellowship or something. But, you know, and it's just, you're laughing, you're joking. It's awesome. And it always ends in tears. Like, why does the Bible say that? Because the reality is someone at that table will be the last person alive. And they will see all those people pass away. Mm-hmm. Or they themselves will. And so those relationships, and they're golden and they're awesome and they make life worth living, you know, they really do. But at the end of the day, they end in a death. That it's just true. Mm-hmm. The best relationships you have, you know, the bad relationships will end in a fight and you won't see anybody again. The best relationships you have will end in a death. Well, that's a dark thought, but there's a reality to it, you know? And so Peter says this, it's in 1 Peter chapter 2. He says, "Dear friends, I urge you as strangers and exiles." Okay. In other words, like, understand your status here. You're not a citizen here. You're not from here. You know, Paul in Ephesians 2 would say, you were citizens of this world, but now you're citizens. He says of Israel, but you know, by Israel, he doesn't mean the nation state. Okay. Like, if you're a Christian believer, you don't get a passport. You don't get to move to Israel. Okay. When he says a citizen of Israel, he means the people of God. Okay. So now you're citizens of God's kingdom, and your permanent residence is elsewhere, right? We're passing through here. So, so Peter says to view yourself as a stranger and an exile, and as so to abstain from sinful desires that wage war against you. Conduct yourself honorably among the Gentiles. And again, by Gentiles, he doesn't mean non-Jews, he means unbelievers. Okay? So there's this mindset that we're traveling, we're moving. It's a journey. And what makes that journey beautiful is that there are people that come alongside us and they travel with us for a while. You know, maybe your spouse travels with you for a long time, you know, hopefully. Your kids travel with you for a certain part of that journey, or really, really good friends. But the fact of the matter is, people come in and they step out, and they come in, they step out, and eventually you step out of people's journeys. There's nothing fixed or permanent here, right? So I think it is metaphorically, conceptually, I think it is really good to view life that way, right? Because it helps you understand what you should value. You know, if Jesus talks about don't store up riches here that are just going to rot and then you're going to die and leave them to people. You know, store up riches in heaven. That's more permanent. You know, the only thing you're going to take with you to heaven are people, your friends and family. You're not going to take anything with you. And so I think that having that mindset, we're passing through, we're traveling, and this, nothing is permanent. There's real love, there's real companionship that maybe could last eternally, but that's about it. And it's going to help you to value people. It's going to help you to value, you know, the Great Commission to reach people for the Lord so that you can bring them with you. You know, I think it's a great way to value, or to view the world. I think it's an accurate way to view the world. And as such, the Bible is full. I mean, it is slam full of stories of people traveling, you know, whether that's Abraham leaving his home, coming to a land he doesn't know, whether that's Moses fleeing from Egypt out into the desert and then coming back home, you know, 40 years later, whether that's the children of Israel wandering in the desert, trying to get from Egypt to the land that they were promised, and on and on and on. You know, Jonah trying to escape God in a boat and then going where he was supposed to go to begin with. Paul traveling all over the Roman Empire to share the gospel. The Bible is just absolutely full of stories of travel. And then the question is, well, you know, why? Well, first off, I think it's just a part of the human experience. But another question is, like, why does God do that? You know, why does God tell Abraham, leave this place you've always known and go somewhere else? Why couldn't God just reveal himself to Abraham where he was? You know, why is the moving and the journeying necessary? Why go here? Why go there? Why is it necessary? And I think that there are some just practical things we can think through. And you know, why does God sort of shake us up and dislocate us sometimes? You know, I think that sometimes in a location where we're incredibly comfortable, that maybe you just learned as much as you can learn there. You're not going to grow there. You've learned all the tricks to be learned. You've mastered that place. And so if God's going to let you grow to be what you're supposed to be, now he's got to move you.
Right.
You know, maybe there's someone who really needs you somewhere else. You know, like I think of the story in the Bible of the Ethiopian eunuch, you know, and God sending one of his disciples, like, hey, go down there to this road, meet this guy, you know. So maybe God's moving you to meet somebody else's need, you know. You think of Elijah when he's sent to the Kerith stream, and then later to the widow of Zarephath's house. You know, God is moving him to protect him. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why God, you know, might move you to grow you to fulfill his purposes. And so what I want to do is I want to ponder what the Lord teaches us through moving. But I wanted to share today, I mean, this is where it's going to be a little bit biographical, a little bit different than what I normally do. I wanted to just share a few things that I learned along the way from traipsing about the globe. So I am, as we sit here and record this, I am 47 years old.
47 and a half or 47?
Yeah.
47 and 3/4?
48 in July. So, you know,
okay.
You know, when this releases, I'll still be 47, but not for long.
The incremental age is only really important when you're like not 16 yet, or you're like less than 10.
Yeah, I'm 12 and a half.
I'm 12 and a half.
Yeah, no, then when you get older, you're like, I'm still 40. The last day, you're like, I'm still 47. Yeah, exactly. No, you're like clawing backwards. But, and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I do want to share, because I think it helps illustrate the point of, you know, what God does when he shakes up and moves us. So I always had a vivid imagination and a desire to travel and go see. Just always did. You know, it's just innate in me. I think it's a part of what God built me with. that prepared me to live the life that I have lived. Like I remember, reading things like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings as a teenager and just being enraptured. Like I want to go out like that and have an adventure and explore. That was just rooted in me. I remember reading like historical fiction, reading stories set in England or Rome or somewhere like, across the ocean, and just being like, I want to see those places. I want to go there. And as a college student, and I did a little bit of travel, as a child. I didn't get to leave this hemisphere. I went to the Bahamas once, and got to go to Canada a couple of times. I have some relatives in Detroit, so just kind of like cross a bridge and like a different country, but not really. The first time I got to really travel was in college. I got to go to England for a month, and that was just like world changing in a way
by
for
the
me.
bug, then.
Well, what it let me see was how easy it was to do. Because a lot of people think that international travel is really hard. Like, wow, it's so complicated. What do you have to know? What do you have to do?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, all you have to do is buy an airplane ticket.
And then most people know English.
Yeah.
If they work in a place where you can spend money, then they know English most of the time.
Yeah. And you got an ATM card, you swipe it.
Or you just
pull
point
money
at
out.
stuff and you're just like,
You throw numbers up.
Yeah.
I mean, want me that? I need 2 of those. Those sandwiches look good. Give them here. Yeah. It's what do it's not that hard really.
Right.
Once I mean, some places are harder than others where there's less English speakers and you're farther away from Western culture. I think as you get the farther east you go, the more foreign the world feels, So like England feels a little foreign, not that much, and Germany feels a little more foreign. Eastern Europe feels a little more. Then you hit the Middle East and you're like, whoa, this ain't Kansas anymore. Then you get to like India or China or Southeast Asia, and you're really, really outside of your because at least the Middle East is like Europe influenced. Yeah, and you get farther and farther away from like your home culture. It does get.
I was surprised how much Israel felt
American.
Yeah, Western. Yeah.
For sure.
But also not. But also
what's weird there is you can be in Miami looking at skyscrapers next to, Google or Intel's R&D center on the beach. It's just like you could be in Miami the same as you're in Tel Aviv. But then you can drive an hour and a half and sit in a tent with Bedouins and have an experience that is ancient. So there's a deep contrast there. There's like this. That's a place where the two collide.
Yeah, for sure.
But then you get a little east, you get to Jordan, and it's just like you've gone a little farther, down that rabbit hole, right? But anyway, I got to England, loved it, just loved every minute of that trip. To the point of and I love America. Don't ever think that I don't love home. Like I do. I love home.
Yeah,
I think Appalachia. Like the mountains in Tennessee, Carolina, North Georgia, some of the most beautiful land in the entire world. Like, that's my heart in some ways aches for like, the hills of Tennessee, North Georgia, those places in the fall. I just love it. Mm-hmm. So don't ever, hear that, like you don't like home and anything I say. But after being in England for a month, I got back here and everything just seemed humdrum, boring. Over there, gas stations are pretty, or at least are prettier, And so I just, there was this just sort of like, I don't know. And I think that's part of what God used to propel me, into the life. I mean, it was just a few months later that I moved to Israel permanently. So anyway, and then from there, I counted recently. I've been to about 30 countries. I don't know. There's people who've been to more, there's people who've been to less. I think I'm in a fairly high percentage of, people who've been to, number of countries you've been to. I've been to about 30 and all over the world, from South Africa to Southeast Asia to all over Europe and the Middle East. So, and so I've had some, again, I don't want to sit here and do like the travel channel. That's not our purpose here, but there are 2 or 3 stories I would like to relate of things I observed and saw that taught me something, along the way. So one of them was a event that took place not that long ago, really. It was just this past June. I needed to go to Zambia, to a town called Livingstone down the far, far south of the country, near the border with Zimbabwe. And the flight schedules were just horrendous. Like everything was like 30 hours, just awful, awful, awful flight schedules and long layovers. And I couldn't make it work. And finally, I saw that I could get a flight into Lusaka, which is the capital. Mm-hmm. And Google Maps told me it was a 6-hour drive from Lusaka to Livingstone. And so I arranged a driver to pick me up at the airport and drive me in the 6 hours. And I called this guy and said, if I'll pay you, will you drive me down there? And the guy was like, are you sure you want to do that? And he kind of tried to talk me out of it. Sometimes I don't listen like I should. And so
I've traveled with you, and this sounds like something that would happen.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't drive yourself.
I would have if I could rent it. I should have actually. But
and they would be like, Jamison, it's over like 6 mountain ranges. Like, I don't care.
Well, yeah, I know. I will next time. So I know it well enough. I think I could probably get away with it. But anyway, it's on the itinerary. Left-hand driving on dirt roads the whole way. Like, why not? Why not? There's a gas station every.
What?
I don't
miles?
even know. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, maybe.
Luckily, if it's
maybe.
There.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I failed to calculate in all that was the fact that 6 hours on African roads is not the same thing as 6 hours on.
It's like 12 hours.
American or European roads. Well, no, it was 6 hours.
Okay.
It's just that here in 6 hours you could cover a lot more miles. And they're a lot smoother. Mm-hmm. So what I thought was going to happen, because it was I was already in Greece. It was about a 12-hour flight down there. Because you don't realize Africa is huge. Africa is as big as North South America put together, and I'm going way down to Southern Africa. So literally flying here to Greece, that's about 10, 11-hour flight. I'm flying just as far south as I flew east to get there, and I want to fly that far south, So it was a long, long way. I got there. It was the end of a hard work week. And I get there already exhausted. And my theory is these guys are going to pick me up around 6, 7 o'clock at night. And I'm going to sleep these 6 hours, get to a hotel around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just going to sleep for 6 hours in the car. So I get in this car, get in the back seat. 2 African guys pick me up. Great guys. Put me in the back of the car. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna kick out, I lean my head over, and no sooner do we get driving than it's just unbelievable. It's just bam, bam, boom, bam, doof, doof, doof. And I'm trying my hardest to like sleep, but my head is just getting beaten against the door of the car.
And you can sleep. I can attest that you can sleep anywhere at any time.
Yeah, it's a skill.
Under almost any circumstances.
Yeah, it's true.
So the fact that you're saying you had a hard time sleeping means it had to.
It's because I was getting pummeled to death in the backseat of this car, just like beaten.
You're like someone left their keys in a dryer. It's just getting banged.
I got left in the dryer. so I'm getting just beat to death in the back. I'm trying to sleep. I'm so exhausted, but I'm also just getting beat up. And so I'm in this sort of just fog of exhaustion and trying to sleep, but also getting knocked around. And I obviously slept some. And at some point, we got far out from the city, and we're on these dirt pothole filled roads in the middle of absolutely nowhere Africa. They don't have the same stars as us because you're in the southern hemisphere. Like, you recognize nothing, nothing. And I got to thinking, like, I don't know these guys that well. I just kind of called somebody and asked for a ride. What if they're bad guys? These dudes could drop me off they could cut my throat, take my bags, drop me in a ditch out here somewhere, and no one would ever even find the body or know where to look. I guess in my delirium, I'm, having this rabbit trail of thought,
oh no, what have I done?
I was like, this could have been a real bad idea. And, as I'm getting, beat half to death. And at some point I kind of fall asleep a little bit, and I woke up to the 2 guys in the front seat are singing. And I listen, and what is playing on the radio, they found a radio station, I guess. What is playing on the radio is an Africanized version. So it's obviously Africans performing, it's kind of that, their kind of rhythms and harmonies. It's an Africanized version of some like Hillsong's praise and worship stuff. So I kind of like wake up to these guys singing like the Jesus music, And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm fine. Like, okay, I guess, I'm probably good. And so then I kind of kicked out for most of the rest of the trip or, the rest of the drive until they got me to the hotel that night. But I remember thinking after that, and I've encountered this all over the world, from Southeast Asia to Southern Africa to Europe to here, anywhere I've gone, is that God really does have a big family. Like he really does. And he has people all over this world that follow him and that are doing their best to love and be a part of his kingdom. Like he really does have a big family. Christianity, more than any other religion, transcends culture. Like that's just true. Every other religion on earth, you can draw a square on a map and have 80% of its adherents in that square. Like for Islam, you circle the Middle East, you got most of the adherents. For Hinduism, you circle India and you've got 90% of its adherents. For Buddhism, Southeast Asia, every religion on earth, you can do that. You cannot do that for Christianity. It's 20% in Europe, 20% in North America, 20% in South America, Africa, China. It's completely globally diffused. And you can go anywhere and you're just a part of God's family there. Like it really does work that way. It's unbelievable how like the culture, the kingdom of God transcends local culture. It just really, really does. And as soon as you know, like I'm with believers, then like it just flows and it's really, really beautiful. Like it really is. There's so many problems that we have with, America is so divided right now, so polarized. And all over the world, you see like tribalism and racism and like all this kind of stuff. And I remember so many times in my life being in places where I was definitely the minority, but because the culture, the kingdom of God transcends, it just doesn't matter, So that's like really cool. That's one thing I learned in travel, which I am very thankful for and love. I learned another example, another thing on a trip to Southern Africa. So not South Africa. South Africa, by the way, is like, it's one of my favorite countries in the whole world.
Well, before you tell your other thing.
Yeah.
So I similarly have had that experience, but the thing that, I guess I didn't grow up in the church. So I'm kind of curmudgeon-y, I guess, about certain things about Christian American culture. Like because I didn't grow up in the church, it's like sometimes I'm just like, ugh, why do we do this? Why do we do that? It kind of turns me off sometimes because I see it through the eyes of like a skeptic or a non-Christian. And that's just my approach. I have like zero sentiment for like certain aspects of like Christian American culture. But oddly, whenever I travel and I go and experience worship services in a foreign country, it's like so oddly emotional and like kind of like overwhelming. Because you're in some place that's 11, 12 hours away or more. It's about as far away as you can get, and you're on the other side of the world and you're like, okay, like this is the same. This is like we're doing the same things. It's like it's the same God, like you said. It's God's family, but it just is kind of like it makes you feel like one, you're a part of something like bigger, but at the same time you're like, wow, it's truly amazing.
No, for sure. I could go on and on with those. Like we went to a Christmas service in Switzerland one time. Whole thing was in German, but the spirit of what was being, you just knew. And some of the songs were the same, but except for they were in German. So, but you knew the melodies, so you knew what was being sung. It was Christmas carols. It was that time of year, and we wanted to go to church. It was, it worked out that year that Sunday was Christmas and we wanted to go to church. And so we went to a church and it was in German, and there was a girl who was supposed to translate for us, but her English was actually really bad. So it wasn't very helpful. So we just kind of sat there and went through it, and my kids were really bored, but it was the same thing. You're like, wow, this is great. And I remember, being on one of those trips to Cambodia, and you're sitting there with Cambodian believers and also Americans of different races, and you're all like laughing, and we were playing card games and stuff like that, and just having a great time. And at some point you look around and you hadn't even noticed that you're all different, but you were, but it just didn't matter. It literally didn't matter. And I was at Capernaum one time, and I was there with Americans and just like teaching the Bible side. And sometimes I've been to those places so many times that I forget how important they are. Yeah. And so I'm just teaching. Like, this is where Jesus taught. This is where he healed Peter's mom, and just doing the whole thing. This busload of Chinese believers. I think the church is much younger. Well, the explosion of the church is young in China. There's always been Christians there for a long time, but the way it's really blown up in the last 20 years. And so this busload of believers from China gets off. They go into the synagogue where we clearly know Jesus taught. And they were all just like weeping and crying, and like they were like laying on the floor and like wanting to almost like kiss it or touch it, and it's like, you're like, wow, their reaction's better than mine. Like where they are is probably more accurate to where I should be, So there's so much you can learn.
Well, you live there. So you're just kind of like, I know you're not. I know you're still finding a lot of awe.
Yeah, but I think as Westerners, we engage so much with our brains,
right,
and not enough with our hearts sometimes, and so like,
well, we've talked about, I think maybe before, it's like that Greek influence of like how we measure things,
Plato and Aristotle,
and like, everything's like evidence based, and it's like, it's not as experiential. Yeah,
for sure. Watching them, I was like, just convicted. You feel like I should feel more like that. So there's so much to learn. As well. But so
you have a second thing.
Yeah, I do. I actually got three.
Okay, that's good. That's great.
So also on a trip to Africa, I had an event. This story is going to border on too much information, but I think it's worth it. So just bear with the content of the story. So I've gotten to do a little bit. I'd like to do more, and I will do more in the future of work in Southern Africa. Southern Africa is it's like God made heaven down there. It really is unbelievable. You can grow anything. The waters are teeming with fish, and you poke a hole in the earth and there's diamonds and gold and copper and all this kind of stuff. Like all the problems are just humans being awful to each other, but the place is heaven. Unbelievable down there. And so, I was in Livingstone, same town, a different trip. And the flights out were better out of Zimbabwe, which is just across the border there, out of Victoria Falls. And so I arranged my flight out from the Zimbabwe side, which meant on the day of my departure, I had to sort of get a taxi to the border, across the border, get a taxi from there to the airport, which we did. And what you find when you travel down there is that, in general, Africa, of course, is poorer than North America. That's just clearly true. But within Africa, there are definitely levels. But there are some countries that are actually, like Botswana, for instance. Botswana is clearly wealthier than its neighbors, or South Africa itself is wealthier than some of its neighbors. And then you've got poor countries. I think Zambia would qualify as a poor country. But Zimbabwe is another level. Zimbabwe is incredibly, very, very impoverished. It's just super poor. They had a really bad government. They still have it. They were taken over years ago by basically kind of like racist, nationalist communists that said they were going to seize all the resources that were owned by foreigners and distribute them to the people. What they really did was they gave all the resources to their cronies, and the people were locked out of it. And it's just awful. And they took one of the wealthiest countries in Africa and made it the poorest. It's awful. And you go there, everybody begs and pleads with you to help them, and you don't have the resources. It's just bad. It's a rough spot. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to fly out of there, and I get a taxi to the airport, and I go in the airport, and I had to use the restroom. So this is where it borders on too much information, but it is what it is. So I walk into the bathroom. There's a bathroom attendant in there, Zimbabwean gentleman. And as I come in, he's kind of like singing, and he stops and he says, "Welcome to my office." I'm like, "Thanks," and I go into one of the stalls, and he says, "No, next one." So he steered me away from sort of stall number one to stall number two, and I open it, and sure enough, It has, both paper and a seat, which in Africa is a big win.
Okay.
It's like, yes.
He's trying to hook you up.
Yeah. So I'm like, this one does seem to be a winner. And so, I'm kind of in there doing what I had to do. And he's singing. And every time someone comes in, he says, "Welcome to my office," and he sort of guides them and directs them through whatever they've got to do. And then he goes back to singing, and I'm listening, and I don't recognize the tune or the melody or whatever, but you can tell it's like it's like a Jesus song. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is some kind of Jesus thing going on here. So I finish up, I step out, he offers me a towel to wash my hands or whatever. And I'm like, "Hey, what is this? What's this song you're singing?" And he says to me in his accent, and you got to think, this is a man who works in a toilet in one of the poorest countries on earth. And this guy says to me, "Oh, it's a song to my Lord Jesus. I like to sing to him every day." As he works in the toilet in one of the poorest countries on earth. And I was just wrecked by that. Like, I remember thinking, I'm an awful, wretched human. Like, I get so worried, so upset about, things I would like to maybe provide for myself, my wife, my kids that they don't really need, I don't really need. And then you waste energy on it and emotion. You're like, this is a guy that probably has 2 outfits in the world. Mm-hmm. God knows what kind of hovel he lives in. He works in a toilet and he's bursting with thankfulness. And I would just remember being like, this is, so I'm saying, like, there's so much to learn when you travel and move.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much perspective, like, to get back again, I don't want to be just like bashing America, because I don't feel that way, but sometimes we think that we think that our normal is normal, and our normal is not normal. We are a very exceptional, weird place. Or, and I don't necessarily mean by exceptional mean better. I just mean we are an exception. We're not the norm. We're not normative globally. And I just think we don't know how blessed we are. And so then we're angry and we're upset in a situation that billions of people would do anything to trade with us. And then you see this guy in such abject poverty, just beaming with happiness and thankfulness. And it's a super check. I remember being like, I should be far more full of thankfulness than I am, so that was a big one. And then, the last one, and I don't want to share the specifics of this one because I don't want to single out a certain like culture or place, but I was in a city, a really large city, where the percentage of the population that know anything about Jesus is pretty low, really low, I guess. So a city dominated by another worldview. I won't say which one or where, because I don't want all the pushback of, I don't know, people from some culture, like whatever it is, being like, that's not true. I'm giving you my impression,
Right.
Devastatingly impoverished place, just severe poverty. You drive for miles and miles and miles, and it's just mud hut slums that you just couldn't hardly believe the level of desperation and poverty. Unbelievable. People don't even have homes, just living outside, with their goods piled up somewhere, whatever they've got, a scrounge, And you drive through that for miles and miles, and up on this hill overlooking all that misery was this beautiful, marble and gold and everything, just stunning temple, shrine to not our Lord. And I just remember thinking, like, they serve that. They don't serve the Lord. They don't know the Lord. And this is the result. Their Lord is not very good to them. And our Lord is very, very good to us. Like if you read C.S. Lewis, he talks about how, if you're a believer in Jesus, you're already at a certain level in heaven, and your life will never get any worse. As far as eternal trajectory, you're going to go on to more and more and more heavenly states. Whereas people who don't know the Lord, generally speaking, they're already in hell and their life will never get any better. And I think when you travel the world and you go to cultures where there's just virtually no interaction with the gospel, where they've never, like we really, really like to beat ourselves up in Western culture. And I think some of that comes from the idea that we think it's good to be self-critical, and it's good to want to grow and learn and get better. And those are good. Those are good compulsions, I think we also have what is at its root actually a Christian concept. The last shall be first and the first shall be last, and that a culture should care for those that are on the bottom, and that we as a culture that has been very blessed should be, more caring and more responsible. Like, we have some ideas that we don't really know are Christian. They really are. But we like to beat ourselves up. But the reality is our culture, Western culture, has had almost 2,000 years to think about and interact with, like the things that you go back even further, go to the Genesis, where it talks about that every human being carries the image of God. And so how you treat humans is how you treat the image of God. And you have some time to think on that as a culture, and then think through that and to make laws that are based on that. And then Paul comes along and says, before God, there's no, Jew or Greek, male or female, slave or free. In other words, God loves all races, the two sexes, and all classes of people the same. God loves a poor slave girl from Africa as much as he loves the emperor of Rome. What does that mean? And you have Paul saying that the slave is your brother, so don't threaten him, treat him as a brother. Well, how do you own a slave and treat him as a brother? Well, this is what leads to the abolition of slavery eventually. That slavery was abolished first in the West due to Christianity, clearly true. So that interaction with Christ in a culture is just, it just does something. And again, we, at our foundation, we have Christ. And, again, I want to say a good Lord. And I think that makes a huge difference. So that's something that I've gotten to observe, over traveling and moving around. And, so I that's just 2 or 3 examples. I could really go on and on, which I won't. We need to cut this short. So I think that's, why biblically God moved people. He moved them so they would learn and grow, and he moved people so that they would fulfill that which they were called to do, which I think that's also true in my life. So where does that lead us to now? So we'd be a little bit biographical. We've been a little biographical, to be more so. My family in the last year and a half has gone through more chaos, turmoil, and change than we have in a long, long time, in 20-something years. For 24, 25 years, I lived in the same country. I lived in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, but those are relatively kind of the same. They touch each other, it's kind of the same place. Not a whole lot of, traveling from there, but we had the same base for a long, long time. And back in February of this past year, I really felt like God was ready for us to move on, and particularly to give our lives and our energies to helping refugee people that are sort of also moving around the world. And we founded that on an idea that Paul articulates in Acts 17 when he's on Mars Hill in Athens. Paul says that God controls the time and the boundaries of where people live, of the nations, so that the boundaries of where nations live and their times are determined by God. And so, in observing all these refugees coming out of Iran, Iraq, and Syria, all these places, Afghanistan now a lot, we're like, this is something God has done. Like, if Paul's telling us the truth, and the boundaries of where these nations live has been so drastically changed, it has to be God. And the next verse says he does this so that some of them might meet him. So there's an answer as to why God moves people. He moves people so they'll meet him. That was clearly true in Abraham's life and in Jacob's life, if you look back. And so what we think has happened is that God sort of shuffled up, sort of blew up our nest, actually, is a better word for it, in Bethlehem, and is moving us, and we're going to be in Athens as our base, but we're moving there so that we can move around that region and help minister to refugee people who we believe God has moved, so they'll learn about Him, and we believe that we've been moved to deliver, the Word of God to those people, and a lot of help as well, humanitarian aid. So there's all that. So it seems that in our lives, there's this big theme of travel and movement. Also, just chaotic, starting something new. Also, our son is going to start college, and so as we're going to we have our first empty nest. There's all this stuff going on. And so as a dad, as the pastor of my family, I felt like the right thing to do, because really this last year and a half has been crazy chaos, an immense amount of work, for both my wife and I, and for my kids too, frankly. And I just felt like what we're supposed to do is take almost like a sabbatical, a little time off to, at the end of all that, to breathe and to refocus on God and each other. At the end of this all, before we step into new chapters. And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk an ancient pilgrimage route. There's a path, goes back to the 7th century, like the 800s AD, when the Moors were invading Spain. One of the Visigoth kings sort of walked from his castle to this church in a place called Santiago de Compostela, Spain, and he prayed there. And the legend is that God gave him some sort of victory in the coming days. And so since that time, since 800 AD-ish, thousands upon thousands, if not millions, of Christians have walked these paths across Spain to this town. I'm not Catholic. I don't think the church is magical, but I do think the act of getting away from your normal life and cars and phones and all these sorts of things and business and walking 12-15 miles a day and praying every day and doing devotions every day.
It's like doing Disney every day.
Minus the roller coasters. The food's a little bit cheaper. The hotels
Walking
are way
12
cheaper.
to 15 miles.
yeah. I think the weather's probably a little better in Central Florida too. But it's like doing Disney, except it's fun. So,
tell us how you really feel about Disney.
Yeah, that's a different episode. That's for our travel blog. Don't spend your money on Disney. Come to Greece, learn about Jesus, or maybe do the Israel tour. Even just go to Europe somewhere. I don't know. I just feel like it's better spent money. Anyway,
they have Epcot.
Yeah, there you go. You can go see the fake ones and you see the real ones. Hey, if you've got a 3-year-old, go to Disney World, I guess. Yeah, it's obligatory to do it once, but it's enough. So anyway, now you know my opinion on that. Because literally for the same amount of money, you can go to London.
Oh, yeah.
Like, why would you not go to England?
It's not cheap.
Yeah. No,
it is fun. The thing about Disney is the entire family can go and have fun at every age. But, go to Europe because it's the same price.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, you'll spend the same thing. So especially if you're living here in Atlanta, it's not that it's pretty cheap to jump on a plane in Atlanta and be in wherever pretty quickly. But anyway, that was not the main point. But yeah, we're going to walk 12-15 miles every day. We're walking a total of about 500 miles from the French border all the way to the other side of Spain. It's going to take us about 40 days, which sounds sort of biblical, doesn't it? And over the course of that, every day,
7 hours, 40 days, 7 hours a day for 40 days.
There you go.
For 7 weeks.
Oof, yes, something prophetic shall happen. But anyway, we're going to do devos as a family every day, and that'll be private. But I said we're going to try to get away from phone technology and business. What we're going to do though is once a day, I'll grab my phone. So it's not going to be the same quality that you're used to here in the studio with the well.
You're not going to take the lights in a backpack and
the mics and no, you're pretty much going to have, you might get a lapel mic, is the best you're going to get out of me. Yeah. But it's going to be a phone and me talking. Hopefully my kid will hold it so I don't have to just selfie it the whole time. But yeah, it's going to be a little rawer than what we normally do around here. But every day in the evening, the Devo that we shared in the morning together, I'll go live, I guess. I don't know what the proper term is on YouTube. But on our YouTube channel, there'll be a live broadcast of me sort of updating the day and how we're doing. I may let my kids, talk a little bit, my wife, just so you guys can meet them. But then I'll share the Devo for the day. Again, 10, 15 minutes a day. And we're going to do that every single day. And what we've done is we've compiled 40 travel stories from the Bible, primarily centered around the patriarchs. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, children of Israel, and Paul. And so we're going to be in a few one-offs. So we'll be kind of sharing those every day, sharing what we're doing, and also a little bit about our ministry and what we're trying to get done. So we would love for people to, engage with that. We normally do, a little higher production value, in studio stuff that's longer. These are going to be shorter, less well produced every day, but we hope they really communicate the heart of what we're trying to do, in reaching people. So, and we want what I really hope we can do with this is create an avenue by which people can really come along on our journey and be a part of it, see what's going on, see what's God doing, and then see how maybe they can get involved as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely excited about that. I think it's a really cool thing. My wife has wanted to do this, so I'm sure we'll be. I know I'll be following along with you because I'll be getting your videos.
If we hear somebody in the bushes behind us is following us for a few days.
Her. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this has been something she's wanted. So I think it's really cool. I think it'll be interesting just to kind of see what that whole experience is like. And then, to get the devotional content, I'm excited about that. And I hope everyone enjoys it. So we will have that. The live streams will happen on the YouTube channel. And then we'll archive them, sort them, and then they'll end up on the Land in the Bible website for people that have subscribed. And they'll get all categorized along with the devotional written content that you've done to go alongside with that. So we'll have all of that bundled up once you're back and everything. And people can, even if you miss it, you can still, go check it out on the site and follow along with it at a later time. But yeah, this is really cool. And then, so you guys are going to do that. So it's going to be 40 days. Yeah. And then you're back, and then you're in Greece.
Yeah, we're in Greece permanently at that point. So we won't even fly back here from there. We'll fly. We're actually, my family, as we're recording now, we're 2 weeks out from flying to Athens, where we've got an appointment to apply for a visa, and we're praying real hard that God lets that work. We've spent way too much time gathering all the documents for that. So we're just kind of praying that will all go through, and then we'll be living there, permanently, and doing our thing, I guess, based there. I have to solve how to do this from, remotely, I guess.
Yeah, we got a plan. I got you.
All right.
We'll be fine. I guess I just have to fly there. I mean,
yeah. We'll record more on site.
But awesome. Well, that's cool. Well, I appreciate, you kind of giving us that background. I think that's fun. I like doing something a little bit different. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And if you're interested in following along, we'll put details on the website as far as like being able to follow along with that. And then if you're just subscribe to the YouTube channel, that's the easiest way to know, and you'll get the notifications for when you go live, and you can follow along with that. So that's about it for this episode, but I hope everyone enjoyed it. To find out more about this, you can go to thelandinthebible.com and like and subscribe on the YouTube channel as always, and listen to the podcast everywhere you can. And we'll see you later.
Hey guys, if you like our content, please click like and subscribe. That really helps us out a lot. And then also go to thelandinthebible.com and subscribe for premium content. If you go over there, we've got tons of stuff that's really great. We have print materials that you can download. We have PDF study guides for all of our lessons. We've got devotional materials over there. We also have every single video and podcast we've done in full-length format with no ad interruptions and full video. So you can get all of that on thelandinthebible.com with the premium subscription, and that really helps us. It helps us generate more content, and also half of it goes to help us go overseas and help refugee kids, is what we're really called to do.